Our next panel features global approaches to leveraging AI for national competitiveness. And we are extremely fortunate to be joined in person by Josephine Teo, Minister for Communications and Information and Second Minister for Home Affairs of Singapore, and Ivan John E. Uy, Secretary of the Department of Information and Communications Technology of the Philippines. Virtually, we are also joined by Audrey Tang, Taiwan's Minister of Digital Affairs. Joe Wang from SCSP will be moderating this discussion. Joe, over to you.
Thanks everybody for being here. Thanks so much, Minister Teo, Secretary Uy, Audrey, Minister Tang. Great to see you on screen. Sorry that you can't be here with us. Such a great honor to be here with you all. So like Channing mentioned, we wanted to talk about global approaches to AI and technology for national competitiveness. And so one of the things we wanted to feature here at the AI Expo really is, think about all the positive things that technology can do for all of us. We know there's been a lot of focus on a lot of the safety issues, a lot of the risk issues around AI over the past year, but we wanted to bring together these senior leaders from really dynamic economies and dynamic nations to talk about how their governments are working on AI and technology. So first question I wanted to give over to you guys, big question for all of you. As you think about the positive use cases for technology and AI, all of you, all of your governments, all of your ministries have done a lot of work in this field. Can you talk to us a little bit about why your nation seized on AI and technology as a key priority for your nations? And what really excites you about what the technology can do to unleash innovation, economic growth, prosperity for your people and for your nations? Audrey, let's start with you, and then Minister Teo, and then Secretary Wang. Minister Tang? Hey, Audrey, hold on one second. I think you're muted.
My. So I will just keep speaking.
Yep, Audrey, you're on.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you for the great question. In Taiwan, we believe that technology is a force for good that can revitalize democracy. And last session actually referred to how we overcame polarization during our January presidential and legislative elections. We pre-bunked conspiracy theories with grassroots fact checkers and participatory tech, including oversight of the entire counting process. And the key here is what we call plurality, using technology to foster diversity, to build bridges, and to augment collective intelligence. So we do not want AI to replace humans, but we want it to help us understand each other better and work together on common challenges. And so a key strategy is the AI Evaluation Center we created to hold AI-assisted deliberations with citizens, not broadcasting, broad listening, to co-create clear guidelines and clear laws. And as AI advances at breakneck speed, we need plurality more than ever. So my hope is for plurality to become a global movement as recognizable as the push for sustainability. It's about using AI to build a future where people can expect democracy to progress as rapidly as our smartphones. And this is the kind of positive future and the strategy we're moving towards in Taiwan. And we invite the world to join us on this hope-filled journey.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Minister Tang.
Well, thank you, Joe. I think it's a great question. It's useful to anchor my remarks on some facts. Many people would know Singapore as a fairly young nation. And at the time that we became independent, this was in 1965, our GDP per person was about US $500. And at the time, it was probably 15% of what the US had as per capita GDP. We fast forward to nearly 60 years, and our GDP per capita is closer to $80,000. And that's about the same as what the US has. So it's a very significant increase over the years. And if you look at real median income, that's continued to grow over the last few decades. Now, there is really only one way in which you can sustain this kind of performance, this kind of wage growth, And that is a relentless productivity uplift. And so at the baseline, when we think about the potential of AI, it's how it can help to further raise productivity, help the economy and all aspects of our society operate and function more efficiently. I think when I don't speak, it's okay. There seems to be a message to me, but let me persist. So, at the baseline, that's what we hope to achieve. But I would just add that apart from this idea of becoming more productive, there are also things that AI and more broadly digital technologies can help us to do that were not possible before. So if you take healthcare, we have an aging population. Could AI help us to administer medicine in a more precise way to improve health outcomes? And if you think about the fact that we are a very built up city and that globally buildings contribute about 40% to emissions, can we use digital technologies, AI in particular, to make better use of energy, be smarter in our use of energy? So these are some of the possibilities that we see. And that's why we have an excitement about AI. And also, I think the consideration is that whether we like it or not, AI developments are going to impact our companies, they are going to impact our people. So either we learn to master the technology or we can no longer master our own fate. And that is why we recognize this early. We were one of the earliest countries to introduce a national AI strategy. This was in 2019. And it's since been updated along with a significant budget boost, to build up compute as well as talent. And, I hope that answers your question.
No, I think that's a great start to this, and we'll get back to the AI strategy a little later as well. I mean, for technical stats, see if we can get a microphone to the minister so that. Okay, so hopefully next time when you talk, it'll be a little bit easier. Thanks so much. But thank you for that. Secretary Uy, over to you.
Thank you, Joe. Well, the Philippines has a very strategic position today with respect to the business process management sector. In fact, we're in competition with India for first spot in this sector. The voice sector, which is the call center area, Philippines currently is leading in this outsourcing specialization. And with the rapid developments of AI, we see a strategic importance of ensuring that the AI that will be deployed will enhance our competitiveness in this sector. There are efforts to utilize more AI-enabled platforms in order to make business process outsourcing more efficient. And we are doing extensive retooling and reskilling of our current workforce. We have about 1.7 million young people in the BPO sector. And this 1.7 million are quite tech literate. Our average age in our workforce is 25 years old. So we have a very young and tech literate population. So reskilling them through deployment of better platforms that would allow them to maximize the capabilities of AI in being able to do their jobs better. What we've discovered is that AI can significantly reduce the amount of time for a new hire to become a middle expert on their jobs, because in the past, the experience that is required for new hires before they can develop the skill sets in order to do their jobs well is at least 6 months, sometimes in a year. But with AI enabled services and platforms, that time frame has actually been reduced significantly. So in a matter of few weeks, new hires can have the same level of efficiency as those that have been with the company for X number of months or X number of years. So this actually opens up a great opportunity for new graduates. Suddenly they have access to jobs where in the past they needed the experience before they can be hired. And I think this is also a good incentive for corporations and employers, because instead of paying mid-level experts, they can actually pay um, apprentice level hires at that salary and still be able to do productive work. So it makes now the business case of being hosted in the Philippines even better. So competitiveness, I think, in this sector would greatly be enhanced because of this new tool that we can use.
No, I think it's great. It's also we chose your three nations and your three ministries because I think there's so much complementarity in the work and the objectives and just in the outlook that your nations bring to all these issues that we're talking about. But one of the common threads from the plurality and the democracy that Minister Teo talked about to Minister Teo, you talked about just kind of making sure that from health and from the elderly, making sure that the government can deliver for its people. And the same thing with Secretary Uy in terms of reskilling your population for the next generation to work. Like all of these are actually whole of nation and whole of government efforts that you're working on. So I wanted to ask, I mean, you all lead ministries within governments. How has it been kind of working with other ministries to make sure that you're really pulling together the resources of the state to do all the work that you're doing? And all of you guys also manage, I believe, the cybersecurity dimensions of your government's work as well. So how has it been really working with other ministries to make sure that there's this whole of government, whole of nation approach to cyber, to AI, to tech, and all the things that you talked about? So let's go in reverse order. Secretary Uy, Minister Teo, then Mr. Todd.
Well, Joe, it's always challenging, especially if we're dealing with departments that are co co-level departments. So uh, the advantage that we have actually is that the president, our president, has been one of the foremost digital advocate. And so at the very start of his administration, President Marcos has been very clear that for Philippines to be able to uh, gain a foothold on the digital marketplace and drive the digital economy, uh, government has to pursue digitalization. And this includes connectivity, upskilling, improvement of cybersecurity capability, and development of the industries that can utilize the emerging technologies at its fullest. Of course, there are uh, sectors in government that are more traditional, and uh, those can be a bit challenging, especially if they already have legacy IT systems. Uh, Being able to convince them that there's a better way of doing things um, can 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 be challenging, and it's actually uh, we show proof. We show proof on how the technology can be utilized in fulfilling their mandate more effectively. And so we tackle low hanging fruits, agencies that are ready for digitalization. We deal with them first, and the other agencies see. that these agencies are now getting very high ratings from the public in terms of public service, and we make sure that those information are published so that if they're laggards, they end up down there. So eventually they come knocking on our doors and say, we now want to be on board. Otherwise, if they run for office, they're gonna have some problems.
Name and shame.
And by all
Always works.
in the United States, obviously, we have the biggest bureaucracies in our government, right? So by all means, for me, this is like, what are the lessons that we can learn from you guys to make sure that we can help kind of level up the way that our government also does it? So, Mr. Teo, how about?
Well, Joe, we are always learning from each other.
Yes.
But I think your question is a great one because governments face very different challenges. And even within the government, the different arms can look at cross purposes. So, to my mind, it's really important to unify around a common goal. And in the Singapore context, the common goal is that we want to be more efficient as well as more effective in how we serve our citizens. For a bit of context, in terms of efficiency, think about the fact that the Singapore government's spending is about 18% of GDP, and that is less than half of the OECD average. So you have a government that prides itself on being lean in the resource usage, but effective in achieving outcomes. One example of this is that in terms of transactions with citizens, about 99% of all of our services can already be completed online. So that choice is available. So, with that as a backdrop, if you talk about the government seeking to become more efficient in the delivery of services, that's a tall order and it's non trivial. And thinking about how AI and digital technologies more broadly can help in this regard for government to be more efficient already requires us to think very hard. What are some of the things that we can do to achieve that? For example, investing in the build-up of digital utilities, such as a national digital identity that makes it easier and much more seamless for citizens to transact across all the different government agencies in order to get their needs met. That's one. Another way is to have a cloud first strategy and then to help the different agencies either rehost or replatform their services onto the cloud in order to take advantage of the efficiencies that you can achieve through cloud. Yet another way in which we can do this is improving government's own data architecture so that data can be made more readily available for policy analysis as well as decision making. So those are some of the ways. But I should add that it's not just efficiency we're after, and effectiveness is also very important. And AI and machine learning can be helpful in at least two respects. One is in terms of how we can achieve precision. So, to give you an example, train services, we are great admirers of Taiwan's efficiency and how they are able to achieve, such high reliability. We moved from corrective maintenance to preventive maintenance. But now the challenge and opportunity is in predictive maintenance. And AI, ML is very good for this sort of thing. So, helping us to be more precise in what we do in maintaining trains, that is actually a very useful way for us to move forward. Now, another way for us to be more effective is personalization. I think people have talked about mass customization for years, and finally, we may be able to achieve it. Think about how a citizen sometimes, let's say they want to just find out what the government can do to help them cope with the cost of living. They may go online and have to trawl through pages upon pages of all the schemes that can help them, and then to figure out whether these schemes apply to them and what sorts of payouts they can get. What if we could design it in such a way that just by an AI assistant asking them a few questions, only the most relevant information is presented to the citizen. Then think about, again, in healthcare, in our hospitals, it is already possible to optimize dosages based on the patient's own characteristics. In schools, our teachers are experimenting with personalized learning plans. So some of these ways are being encouraged. And how we do so is to make AI tools available so that within the public service there can be more experimentation. So that's how we hope to be able to proliferate AI adoption even within government.
No, it's always great to hear from other countries, especially just the dynamic economies that you guys come from. Just given how flexible and how innovative and how quickly you guys can really move forward on these different schemes that you guys can build up for your nation. So hopefully we have representatives from the U.S. government in the audience as well, listening and hopefully taking some lessons. But Minister Todd, over to you.
Yeah, certainly. First of all, really agree on trusted data fabric infrastructure. Taiwan also had this kind of infrastructure using the same budget as highways and roads and bridges and so on as a matter of national public infrastructure, because we also think that really this stimulus federation across data silos without compromising sensitive information is critical for cross-departmental collaboration and supports the safe and sustainable deployment of AI. I want to also highlight our push for public code, which is similar to the open government products of the Singaporean GovTech. The idea is that code developed in a local government using the public purse can be reused readily by default to the central government and vice versa, utilizing industry and civic strengths to rapidly improve digital services. So code.gov.tw, our public code portal, all those tools are being updated by developers worldwide. And we launch not just the high level like presidential hackathons, but also really down to earth, what we call civic tech testing fields in partnerships with other departments, with local governments. So these are like sandbox environments that allow AI startups, researchers, and civic hackers to test new model, new code for public challenges. And then we uplift those promising projects integrated into our core digital infrastructure to solve those common needs. So we believe that this all hands on deck approach is key to digital solidarity, both internationally, but also across departments.
No, no, that's again, I think for us here in the U.S., part of the task that we have really is how do we expand the aperture, take a look around the world, and see what are the best practices, best lessons learned from how other governments are doing things. Again, for us, we're so big that it takes a long time for us to really get moving, right? That's the challenge that we have as a big nation, big bureaucracy. But once we get going, that's when really we become unstoppable in the sense that once the change takes root inside our government, it really proliferates in a way that really transforms how technology works and how our government operates, and also the different varieties of public goods that we can deliver to our people, right? So I think that's where, for us, like a lot of lessons learned that you all have been already embarking on with your nations and your governments is really important for us. But Secretary Uy, so this is your second time in government. You've been working on these issues in the Philippines for a long time. Can you tell us a little bit about like how have you seen the tech landscape change in the Philippines over the past 10 years since you were also in this position a while ago as well? What's changed on the ground in the Philippines for you?
Well, what's significant is that the technology now has evolved in such a way that uh, it you can actually implement technology outside the physical environment that let's say some of these government agencies are operating on. To give you an example, in my previous life, when I was the CIO of the judiciary, uh, those were the times when you have local area networks, connecting them via cables. And what's been challenging during the time is that when you automate or computerize the government agencies, and those government agencies do not want to be computerized, it's very easy for them to unplug or cut the cables or pour vinegar on the devices so that and then they'll tell you, sorry, we're offline, So let's do it cash. Let's transact cash and let's do it face to face. Today, with cloud and virtualization and mobile technology, you don't need to be in their environment. You can develop the platform independently on a data center, on a virtual environment, and allow the public now to engage and access services through their mobile devices. So there's no way for them to switch off the computer or to sabotage the cables because it's completely outside their physical control. It's all on the cloud, and I think that that has made implementation more uh, easier, and at the same time we can scale it much faster. So so I think that's one of the main differences. Second is that more public servants are actually seeing that technology does not necessarily would jeopardize their jobs, but actually will allow them to be able to perform their work much more efficiently so that they become more productive and they actually have more time for their family or to do other things on top of their regular jobs. You would recall time when we had the COVID pandemic. So a lot of families were forced to work from home, and it actually enhanced the family relationship because whereas in the past both parents work and the kids are left at home with maybe with grandma, uh, these kinds of arrangements allow for uh, better supervision between the parents and the children, better it actually improved the relationship and reduced the issues on juvenile delinquency because the parents now are able to address problems even before they happen because of their physical presence there. Not to mention that if they happen to be working in the office, they can see their kids from the office and what they're doing, and even monitor whether they went to school or not because of all these devices and systems that can monitor them and track them.
Home surveillance.
You know, that's really interesting though. So I think it's like it's an interesting way to talk about how technology and AI really is helping us connect more with our humanity, right? You know, in some ways people think about how technology is pushing us further apart, how we're actually separating ourselves from each other. But then, you know, especially with the experience that we all had during the pandemic, like reconnecting with our roots is one of the things that, you know, ultimately makes us human. It's what's really worth thinking about how we can make sure that technology helps us in that way, right? Rather than being negative about how technology is driving us apart and disconnecting us, but how do we think about how technology can better connect us? So, Mr. Teo, you talked about the Singapore's updated AI strategy. I want to ask, you know, you just went through this recently. You know, as other nations think about building AI strategies, what kind of advice would you give them in terms of how do you do it well, right? What are some lessons learned from your process of like what matters for a nation? And every nation will have different objectives they try to achieve with AI, but just in terms of the process and in terms of the outcomes, any lessons learned that you would give to other nations who are looking to build their own national AI strategies?
Well, Joe, I don't know that we are in a position to give advice to other countries because, we all have different circumstances and different starting points. But here's how we think about it. Um, whether it's Singapore or any other country, perhaps, um, it's not our God-given right to succeed in AI adoption. What we can do, however, is to try and put in place the building blocks and to create as conducive conditions as we can uh, to make AI come alive. And in our national AI strategy that's been recently updated, we think of, three sort of categories of building blocks. The first is we will need to put in place the right kinds of activity drivers. The second is we will need the right types of people and communities. And thirdly, we need to also to have the right infrastructure and ecosystem. When I talk about activity drivers, I'm looking at industry, I'm looking at the research community, I'm also looking at government. All three have to be fired up. All three have to gain momentum in becoming more capable in AI usage, as well as creating more use cases. So that's essential. But what supports all these activity drivers? You also need the people and communities. And again, broadly, we are thinking of three groups. The first is that you need AI creators, and there are not all that many around the world. We are very welcoming of anyone who would like, as a creator, to work with Singapore. They don't necessarily have to be in Singapore because we are, after all, talking about the digital world. But it's not enough to just have AI creators. You also need practitioners, you need data scientists, you need machine learning engineers. And here, I think we can, together with the private sector, put in the resources to grow the pipeline. I would say that we also do not ever underestimate the power of enabling the vast numbers of people in the overall workforce to acquire AI related skills so that they can be proficient in the use of AI tools. So these people and communities, I think, provide a sort of a foundation. But there is another foundation that is very important. In infrastructure, we need compute. We also need data. And in terms of compute, if you think about what we have in Singapore relative to our population, relative to our GDP, we probably have one of the most dense data center capacities. So it's quite a natural place to be a compute hub for AI. But at the same time, our data policy is a very pro-innovation one, meaning that at the same time that we protect privacy, we protect data, we also promote its legitimate use. And then finally, I think in terms of overall ecosystem, people need to have the confidence that AI is being developed and deployed in responsible and trustworthy ways. So along with whether the first edition or the second edition of our national AI strategy, we've always had an AI governance framework. And of course, in today's context, the AI governance framework must also look into the risks and the mitigating measures that we must put in place, the guardrails to do with generative AI. So I think when you have these building blocks, then you have what it takes, to create the right conditions for AI to flourish. That's what we're focused on.
And I think that's really, really, really great, really key. And so just as a preview, so tomorrow we'll have a session with the directors of the US and the UK safety institutes to talk about exactly that in terms of how the US and UK are really trying to forge a frontier of how we want to see the landscape for AI safety and governance. So by all means, if you guys are around tomorrow, that session will be, it's on the schedule for tomorrow. So, look ahead. But also in terms of like when you talk about the AI creators point, it actually, made me think about Taiwan as well, since I know like Audrey and Mr. Tang, like when people think about Taiwan, they usually think about hardware, right? They almost always think about chips, but there's actually a really robust AI software digital creator ecosystem that Taiwan has built out as well. So can you talk a little bit about how your ministry has helped cultivate that?
Yeah, it is true that Taiwan is renowned for semiconductors. At the same time, we're equally proud of our thriving software ecosystem, from AI to cybersecurity to civic tech. And part of the reason why Taiwan has become such a hub is talent cultivation, not just domestic, but also buoyed by the Gold Card program, which really took off during the pandemic. In the digital field, anyone who contributes to GitHub or other professional communities for 8 years is automatically eligible to apply for the Gold Card, a comprehensive package including residency, healthcare, and entrepreneurship opportunities. More than 6,000 such Gold Cards have been issued across 10 fields. And we see our chip-based industrial innovation program launched this January, as an integration between the hardware and the software ecosystems. For example, the post-quantum cryptography applications, it requires PQC chips, of course, but also security automated verification tech. And so to safeguard future digital communication infrastructure, you need both, and that further boosts our cybersecurity industry. And so I believe this shared idea of advancing responsible innovation across hardware and software ecosystem is what unites the sectors in Taiwan together.
So usually at all of our events, we always have a lot of young people, young professionals, people that are still in school. And I always like to end these sessions with really senior, really experienced people with the question about, as young people in the audience and also just online as they look at this on YouTube, what advice do you give to young people who are thinking about careers either in technology or in public service? How do you encourage people inside your nations and everywhere basically to think about national service as something that they should choose as a career? Mr. Teo.
Well, when I was younger myself, I came across this quote that has been incredibly helpful to me. It said, don't climb the ladder of success only to find that it's leaning against the wrong wall. So, what I always encourage people to think about is, well, in whichever field you're contemplating, do you have what it takes to make a difference? Do you have what it takes to succeed and create an impact? Then the second important question is that is the difference that you will make, is the impact that you will create something important to you, something that you care about? These two conditions must be fulfilled. And if the answer to both are yes, go forth and make the best of it. I hope that's helpful.
No, I think it's like I love the fact that it's about mission driven, right? Like understand what your mission, what you want your mission to be, and really go for it. Secretary Louis.
Well, my advice to the younger generation is well, technology will always be there, and it's always going to be continually evolving. And what we need to keep in mind is we should not lose our critical thinking capability, because machines, they may be able to harness a lot of data, digital data, and produce churn out conclusions, materials, but uh, we are seeing that the output sometimes can be the result of wrong data that is being harvested, or the bias that we see because of the nature of the data that is being harvested. For instance, today, most digital data are data that is Western. You see very little uh, digital data from Africa. Uh, and so when you have AI models that produce these outputs, you are blind to what could be um, outputs based on that sector of civilization that does not have as big a digital footprint as Western data. So we have to keep in mind that we cannot accept things hook, line, and sinker. We need to be able to critique. We need to be able to see through the technology, understand the technology, because it's only in understanding the technology that you'd be able to uh, consider what are the biases, what are the factors that are inputted in that technology that may be uh, incomplete, and allow for a better understanding. What we fear is that the younger generation will grow up in a completely AI environment where they accept the outputs of AI as gospel truth, and therefore are not able to discern whether that output actually is based on factual information or not. Just to give you an example, would be what happened in Google when was asked to produce a image of the founding fathers. The output did not actually reflect on the factual information on who the founding fathers of the United States were. It was a more racially inclusive uh, picture of the founding fathers. So can you imagine? Uh, we, the older generation, have lived in both worlds, and we know for a fact that that output was not accurate, but it inputted biases, it inputted values that were in the algorithm in producing that AI. If the younger generation completely accepted that without thinking, then you stand the danger of a new generation having notions of a completely different history that is detached from what really happened. So I think there's a potential for AI to become a new religion where people will accept its output as gospel truth and will not tolerate any dissent or any contrary opinion because they feel they increase that fanaticism that output is infallible. And I think that's where the youth will need to be more discerning in dealing with technology.
I would just add also, yes, youth need to be more discerning, but at the same time, mentors such as yourselves need to be there to make sure that the youth are moving in the right direction. So I think that's a important point there as well. But Minister Tang, over to you. What advice would you give
Yeah.
to young people?
Yeah, to all the beautiful young minds considering careers in public service, I would suggest think about collaborative learning, not just machine learning, especially not solutionism. To bring your whole self, your creativity, humor, unique perspectives to work, because that will help you connect with people, build bridges. And for example, when I first entered the cabinet in 2016, I was determined to practice radical transparency, working not just for the people, but with the people. And many thought at the time it was naive or impractical. But by staying true to my cornerstone belief, we have crowdsourced better laws, made the government more transparent, and depolarized society. And so the key here is to remember public service is a marathon, it's not a sprint. So we need to prepare ourselves for the long haul. And when challenges seem insurmountable, you can always turn to your support networks for encouragement, for reassurance. And so it will not be easy, but I think working with the people, not just for the people, and defending democracy is truly an exciting adventure, one in which all your compassion, creativity, and courage can come to the fore.
I think there's no better way to end the session than with that. But thank you all, Minister Teo, Secretary
Thank you,
Roy,
Joe.
Minister Tang. Thanks so much.
Thank you to you too, Joe. Thank you.